Thank you all for joining us for our monthly partners meeting. It's wonderful to see you all here. Thank you. We know you're all very busy.
Good afternoon, and I'll be brief, but I wanted to share that we are moving towards a place in our history that requires more than policy statements and letters to the editor. Um, uh, I've gotten a couple of calls over the last 2 days, and the idea is that we really are going to need to take an aggressive approach to addressing criminalization. Two communities in general have reached out, and they are really at a point of frustration and a point of real confusion about what to do next. So, got a couple of calls from California and also Miami, and people are really interested in some sort of action. And so, one of the things we're going to talk about today in our open discussion is what does that look like? How can we make our elected officials accountable for what's happening since the Supreme Court case? So we'd love to hear from you. We'll have a couple of other things that we want to raise in terms of issues, but we're glad you're all here, and we hope to have a fruitful discussion about our next steps in this fight that has become more and more intense since that decision. So thank you all for being here. Look forward to a great discussion today. Thank you, Adaora.
Of course. Thank you so much, Donald. So we can just jump right into it. I did want to speak a little bit about the state captains volunteer. So I am the new lead for this, and have been sending out initial emails to everyone that did express interest in the email thread a couple of weeks ago. What I will be doing is following up so that we can start getting the initial introductory meeting set up in the next couple of weeks. So you will be, for those that are on, receiving those emails, I want to say by next week, so that we can start getting a tally of what dates and times look best for everyone participating. So far, we do have about 30 volunteers spanning over 15 states, so that is great, especially for that initial outpour. Please, for those that have not signed up, if you do have any interest in acting as a state captain and pretty much creating a more transparent partnership with us at NCH and BAHN, we would greatly appreciate that. And please do send that out to your networks, colleagues, friends, and constituents as well. We would love to have them, and you'll be receiving that information, that follow-up information soon. Also, wanted to talk about a little bit about the I'll Rise and Vote tour that NCH and BAHN did partner with the Transformative Justice Coalition to embark on, and also shedding light on the You Don't Need a Home to Vote campaign as well. We recently kicked off the tour in Jacksonville, Florida, to spread voting rights awareness, especially to young people and those experiencing homelessness, and helping people gain access to the knowledge about their voting rights, specifically in their states as well. During the concert, we did have many partnering organizations assist people with registering to vote or locating the most conventional poll stations for them to do so. And during that time, we also did spread awareness about NCH and BAHN, garnering support and trying to get more partners and membership as well for the organization. And as for next stops, we are geared to go to Detroit, Michigan and Savannah, Georgia, and those dates will be for later this month to do the same thing as well. And as far as the Know Your Rights template, those are finished and posted to the website for everyone to view. So please, if you haven't, please go and check those out. We still are doing the legislative scorecards for the congressional members that are up for re-election in November, and are pretty much on the last, I believe, 60-ish members that are amazing interns are so graciously helping us to finish. And as for partners, we are sitting around over 560 partners and plan to be doing outreach over the next coming months to grow that number as well. And if you are on this call and haven't registered as an official partner or member, organizational or individual, please do so and encourage your network as well to do so and join the calls as well, so that we can continue to forge a plan forward to ending homelessness as well. So thank you so much for listening. I will go ahead and pass it to Megan for updates on the Lived Experience Leadership Conference.
Thanks, Adaora. Hey, everybody. Megan Hustings, the Deputy Director of the National Coalition for the Homeless. Really glad to see you all here today. Thanks for taking the time out. If you didn't know yet, we are having our next leadership conference is in San Jose, California. Excuse me, we're partnering with Destination Home to host the event. We are getting close. It's going to be November 11th through the 13th. We have actually sold out of registration and assigned all of the about 200 scholarships, maybe a few more with speakers. The last numbers I saw were that 77% of all those who have registered so far have lived experience with homelessness. So we're really excited. It's going to be a really great event. We have lots of different workshops, people coming from all over the country and Canada as well. I don't remember exactly. It's between 30 and 40 different states that we have represented, and a good number of people from across California, of course, since it's on the West Coast. And we are working right now to get all the scholarship recipients their travel. Scholarships did include the cost of registration, as well as for anyone who needed it, lodging and their transportation to get to San Jose and back home again. And so, yep, we're working on that right now. And we're really looking forward to it. Working to finalize all details. It's coming up pretty soon.
Sue Watwell-Phillips. I am a board member of NCH, also experienced homelessness over 50 years ago, and I am co-chair of the policy committee. And thank you, Francis, for sharing the quick update that I put together this afternoon. So just wanted to let you also know that I just put something in the chat, too, that I will talk about as we're going through the policy updates. So as most of you are aware, we did not go into a government shutdown at the end of September. We did have a resolution that passed and was signed into law by the president on September 27th. It's a continuing resolution, or a CR. What that is that we are basically funded at the same level going into our new fiscal year that started October 1st, as we were during the fiscal year 2024. So it passed both in the House and Senate with large majorities. So that means all the annual spending bills are funded, and so there are dollars for folks to utilize, and it basically keeps the federal government open through December 20th, so through the election. So what this means is that the House and Senate, unless they are called back into session, will not be back till November 12th. There is one reason that they may come back earlier, and that is because FEMA is basically out of funding. Now, the CR, or the continuing resolution, did provide the dollars for 2025 at the same level of 2024. They can access those dollars right now according to the resolution. So there is some discussion and some misinformation that's being put out by some parties in regards to how FEMA utilizes those dollars. And so just encourage you to make sure that you're getting accurate information as you are understanding how FEMA is trying to fund itself with this horrible Hurricane Helene and tropical storm that destroyed a lot of our southeastern states, and especially around Asheville and Chimney Rock and those areas, as well as many other areas. It basically created a 300-mile just swat through many states and just destroyed everything in its way. So please keep folks in your thoughts and prayers. If you have any extra resources to send to help people, that would be great. So just wanted you to be aware of that. Then if you want to just scroll down, the National Income Housing Coalition, which is a partner on the Bring America Home Now campaign with the Alliance and CBPTP. They are having a webinar next week on advancing solutions. And so I think this may be really helpful for the state captains to be involved in. So it's happening October 8th, Tuesday, October 8th, as Francis is highlighting that from 2 to 3. There is a link there. We'll make sure that you get that information so you can sign up for that. They're going to be talking about different innovative ways that states and local are creating innovative solutions for preventing and ending homelessness. And so I encourage you to take a look at that. And then just to go over for those of you that were not on the call last month, President Biden has been calling on Congress to pass legislation that would require landlords to cap rents at 5% or be at risk of losing federal tax breaks. That would impact landlords that have 50 or own 50 or more units, and that would cover 20 million of the units nationwide. This does require congressional action, so it's not in place. It doesn't have a great deal of chance in this current Congress, but certainly elections matter. And so depending upon who we have in Congress in 2025 and who we have as president could have an impact in regards to moving that legislation forward. What is in regulation right now is the Federal Housing Finance Agency now requires that any organization that's supported by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac funds have to provide a 30-day notice before rent increases, a 30-day notice before lease expiration, and a 5-day grace period before imposing any late fees. So that impacts 1.2 million units across the United States. So important to get that information out to folks that you're working with. And then also the president has told all of the federal agencies, including the Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service, Postal Service, Department of Transportation, HUD, HHS, General Services Administration, that they need to look at land that they are not currently using to repurpose that for the creation of tens of thousands of affordable housing units. So there is a real strong plan both in the Biden-Harris administration currently, as well as in the Harris-Walz campaign about creating millions of additional affordable housing units, both rental and home ownership. We have not seen a plan in regards to housing from the Trump and Vance ticket at this point. And then a couple other things that were a part of the interagency call a few weeks ago is that there's a fact sheet on the Biden-Harris administration working on actions to lower housing costs by cutting the red tape to build more housing. So there's a link for that. And then again, in the Section 108 program, there are dollars to help you in basically doing adaptive reuse for commercial to residential conversion, rehab of existing housing, helping with enabling infrastructure such as water and sewer and upgrades, and revolving loan pools to support local development. So your community needs to tell HUD that you're interested by November 1st if you're interested in getting these dollars. So these dollars come through communities that receive directly community development block grants. And so really are focused at, these are focused at low interest loans for these transformative housing investments. So it's $250 million of loan financing, and just really encourage you to take a look at that as you're looking at transitioning potentially hotels into single room occupancy, or into emergency housing, or if you're looking at transforming in repurposing commercial buildings into housing. So it's a great opportunity for your community to look at some very low interest loan money to make those things happen. So again, we'll keep you up to date on resources. The BAHN policy work and the National Coalition policy work is done, a lot of it's done through the policy committee that meets the second Tuesday at 2 o'clock Eastern time. So maybe one of the staff can put a link into that if you'd like to join us. And I think that's it.
I have one question if I can. This is Paul from RAP. Is there anything happening with the Homes Act, the AOC bill?
So it was introduced a couple weeks ago. There will be no action during this Congress, so it'll have to be reintroduced in 2025.
But are the national groups trying to get co-sponsors and trying to drum up support for it for the next session, or?
Yes, we've actually sent it out a couple of times, Paul. So that is, we've sent it out in our letter. We've signed on and asked others to sign on as well. I think it will probably ramp up, and they're actually doing a couple of other things, Tina Smith's office. So it'll really ramp up in the next Congress. But there may be, sufficient sign-ons between now and the election. But as Sue was saying, nothing probably will happen before next year.
And Donald, do you want to just say that Senator Smith is going to be a part of an event in early 2025?
Yes, I know she's doing. I don't have the details of the event, but I know she's inviting some of the groups that have been working with her to be a part of it. I did have one other thing, and Sue, if you want to add to that, absolutely. But promising state legislation. Paul will be happy to hear this, something we worked on, Megan and others, for years. In Delaware, they just passed a homeless protected class piece of legislation based on the Americans with Disability Act. So that's something we were trying to do federally for a long time, and it's really promising to hear that that's happening in the local community. And this is basically their response to Grants Pass. So hopefully, once we get that actual legislation, we can send it out to you all, and you may be able to work on getting that passed in your community. We're also working with mayors. We have a meeting with Mayor Bass that we've asked her to sign on to a Dear Colleague letter, because she's one of the communities, one of the leaders that says that she's not going to criminalize people. And we want her to do a Dear Colleague letter so we can get more communities to do that. And Sue, if you want to go back to Tina Smith's event.
So my understanding, Donald, is that you're going to have her be a part of an event that we're going to have at the Visitor Center. Is that right?
Oh, yes, that's a different thing. So I thought you were talking about the meeting she's going to have, but we've been working on for a couple of years a film called Beyond the Bridge. We're a part of the steering committee, as are other national organizations. And so we invited members of Congress to do a viewing at the Visitor Center, and that's going to happen. It may happen sooner, though, Sue. That's why when you said January, I was thinking something else. It may actually happen in October or early November. So the current dates are the last week of October. So this would be an invitation to all of the members of congressional offices at the visitor center. If anybody's been to DC, it's a beautiful facility. And so they're going to invite people to actually look at this film that really talks about the value of housing first, but also talks about, really gets into why that model works for some people, but we need other solutions. But the solutions are not the kind of criminalization activities or, push everybody into a substance abuse or treatment program. So it has probably 50 different people. Paul, I think you were on there as well, who have worked on the issue for years. And it's been showing across the country. I think they had 1,000 people at their last showing in Indianapolis. I know Minnesota had a showing. It's been shown in Atlanta. So it's gaining some steam. And it's really good timing because there's some other less favorable films that are out right now that have been produced by some of the people who believe in criminalization. So,
and then if I could just add real quick, Adaora, we had a great webinar that Rajni, myself, John Harrison, and one of our providers in Minnesota, Ally Services, did on unsheltered homelessness and funding resources and how you have people that have or are experiencing homelessness involved in developing and running the programs to assist people that are experiencing unsheltered homelessness get into housing. So it was a 90-minute webinar on Monday. So the video will be available probably in the next week or two of the webinar. So over 500 people from around the country joined us. So we'll make sure that if you're interested, we'll just make sure that everybody that's on the Bring America Home Now partner list gets a link to that. I think it gives you a lot of really good ideas in regards to different resources, ways to work with communities, with local police and sheriff's department, how it can be a really we are your neighbor approach and a community approach, and to not criminalize people experiencing homelessness. Minnesota, where I'm located at, was one of several states that provided the Supreme Court amicus or amicus brief, depending upon how you say it in your community, basically opposing criminalization of homelessness. So this is something that we are pushing very hard in our 6 virtual bus tours that we're doing at MICA, which is the Metropolitan Interfaith Council on Affordable Housing in the Twin Cities. Those also are available, will be available on the MICA website if you're interested in looking at how different regions in both rural, urban, and suburban areas are trying to make sure that people are getting into homes as opposed to criminalizing people too. Thanks.
The White House, I meet with the White House monthly, and they are going to be introducing next week new regulations around the Title V program of McKinney-Vento. And just real quickly, if you don't know what that is, if there's a federal building that is no longer in use, the first use for that is supposed to be for homeless programs. And for years, it's been kind of stuck in paperwork and regulation. They've actually created new, more seamless regulations for that. So looking forward to seeing that. That should be out hopefully in the next week or so.
So RAP has put together outreach tool, a form that all 11 of the RAP members in 5 different states will be conducting to people being swept. We wanted to ensure that even if somebody can't be at the meeting, those voices are still at the table. This is just a handout that we have for when you're doing the outreach, talking to people. This is what we'll be putting up on the website. We did a test run of about 45 or 50 of them and have already started getting some direct feedback. But as we did with the Right to Rest Act, where we talked to 2,000 people with consistent set of questions about their experience with the pigs out on the street and in their communities, and identified loitering and sitting and sleeping as the top 3 criminal offenses, So from that, we wrote the Right to Rest Act to decriminalize standing still, sitting down, and sleeping in a non-obstructive manner. It helps to really guide our priorities and our advocacy work. And if we do legislative work or if we're doing legal work, like to be able to really concretely, in an accountable way, say how many people did we talk to and what time do they say it is? And some of the trends that have jumped out automatically just from the beginning part of it is overwhelmingly no reason has been given for the sweep. 81% of the people so far got 24-hour notice. You know, the referrals for successful referrals for services are non-existent. And 93% of the time that the sweeps are happening, it's happening by local police departments. Like all of these things that they say they're doing, the outreach, the referrals, none of that shit. It's like housing choice vouchers. Nobody's able to get housing with a housing choice, or rarely are they able to get housing with a housing choice voucher. Well, almost never do they actually get services when they're being swept. Do they actually get notices about the sweeps? And the ability to get legal support to fight the sweep is virtually non-existent. We can all say we know this shit, but when we're at meetings and when there's webinars galore about sweeps right now, especially since grants passed, these voices aren't at the table, and they need to be. Because if we're going to talk about people that are being swept, we ought to be able to document and show this is what the people being swept have to say about the sweeps and how they're being conducted and how it's impacting them. Far and away, when we ask people, what should we be telling folks about sweeps? That they're traumatizing and devastating, that the cops are incredibly fucking aggressive, and people got nowhere to go. Like, that's from them directly. That's not us speaking on their behalf. And so this form that we created, and we'll have it in English and Spanish, it'll be up on the website. The handout will be up on the website, and we'll keep the handout updated as we're getting more information. But to be able to use our personal experiences, those of us that have been homeless and shit, we all got different stories. That's just our story. But when it's connected to the majority of the people that we're speaking on with, and we're uplifting those voices, it carries a lot more power. And when they say, oh, we always give people referrals, and we say, well, we talked to 250 people in your community, they said they didn't get a referral, or that the referral wasn't successful, or that, you know, like whatever it is that they're telling us, we need to be able to have it accountable. We need to be able to have it documented, and we need to be uplifting those experiences and those voices. So this is a tool that we've created in terms of how we as RAP member organizations, how we do our shit. We will have it available. At the end of the day, we'll be producing, as we do this, we'll be producing citywide fact sheets about outreaches in that city, statewide, because we're doing it in 5 separate states. So statewide fact sheets, and then the national fact sheet that ties them all in together and identifies the common threads in people's experiences, ideally throughout throughout the United States. But, you know, we're just a punk ass group in California. So we'll start on the West Coast, and hopefully working with you all, we can build it out across the rest of the country. And all of this will be available. The handout will be available. All of it will be on the website. You can download it. If you want to just compile your own in your own community, you know, we can tell you how we do the calculations. We have a pretty detailed Excel sheet so that we're able to identify the percentages and separate out the cities and the states. So we're always down to assist in doing that. But we tested it, we created it, we tested it, we finalized it. And as of October 1st, we're hitting the road and starting to do our outreach.
Thanks, Paul. This is great work, which you guys always do great work, and I think it can be certainly used nationwide. So we do have a follow-up on the unsheltered homelessness on December 12th. Wondering, one, would you like to present? And secondly, could we use this as a resource that people could utilize? And then also working on some data collection in homeless encampments. And I think this might be a really helpful tool for communities to look at too. And I'm wondering if you're comfortable in this being shared in many different venues.
Yeah, I mean, hey Sue, you know us, we don't trademark the shit. So we put it up and we get it out and people can download it. And if they have questions or if they need some assistance in utilizing it, they absolutely are encouraged to get a hold of us, and we'll work with them and we'll show them how we're doing our stuff and how we're using it. You know, I think to me, the thing is, you know, and we see this, you know, this isn't new. Like I remember us doing the 400 when we started Bring America Home a long time ago.
That's right.
You know, it's just an organizing tool. You know, it's like we need to lift up their voices and their experiences and our community members' experiences with this shit. They don't need us to speak on their behalf. And so this is a tool we use to be able to validate saying we are experiencing this. And, you know, it's not, there's not only one use for it, you know, and the academics don't like it because it's not whatever, but it's like, if you're going to be talking about sweeps, it's really incumbent upon you to have the voices of the people being swept in that discussion, whether they're formally homeless or not. You still need to have the current experiences being documented and being expressed in the realities of meeting with freaking politicians and academics and fucking mayors. I mean, Bass is criminalizing the hell out of people. She just didn't like Newsom's order. So, you know, we'll be, you know, somebody asked about Venice Beach, and, you know, I'm hoping that that they'll play with us on this. I would imagine that they would, and Venice Community Housing and Becky and them, I know, will be interested in it.
When we get at other communities collecting the outreaches, are you guys going to be collecting that data, or do you need help with that? Do you want NCH to support?
I mean,
we tried to do it before, I know, but
well, it's just, you know, I'm hoping it broadens from past times we've done this, because a lot of groups get really interested in doing it and then you don't hear from them again. But if it actually grows this time, and I really hope it does, then yeah, for the broader context, we would definitely want to be talking with you guys about the Bring America Home Act members maybe being able to work through, or at least get some staff support. You know, and in the meantime, I'll just keep fucking around with Francis and Adaora, and we'll see how it builds out. But yeah, it is pretty staff intensive collating and going through, and there's 3 open-ended questions, so you really got to give due respect to the people's comments about what they want us to be talking about and what they want people to know about sweeps. And definitely, I think it's something we can play with together and create some really powerful organizing tools.
Yeah, cheers. And just acknowledging too, I see Eric is on here, so maybe like bringing Jesse or Eric or others from the Law Center together to see what we can, you know, collect on a national level if it's helpful.
Yeah, well, you know, it is a big part of Eric's and our legal defense clinic model is the street outreach, and this is very directly connected to that. So we'll definitely be, you know, we'll definitely be talking with them about this. Oh, there's Eric. Hey,
thanks for updating the outreach. We're excited.
Hey everybody, this is Eric Tars. He is pronouns Senior Policy Director at the National Homelessness Law Center. We have been collecting anti-homeless policies that have been passed since the Grants Pass decision came down. So far we have 55 that have passed in just the 3 months since the decision came down. There are another 34 or 33 pending. The first line on this is city-state measure, so like, yeah, it's one less than you see here. But there are a number of positive things that have happened as well. I know Paul just said that Mayor Bass is still criminalizing homelessness, but at least she's speaking out against Gavin Newsom, which has its own value. So counting that as a positive, recognizing that it's complicated. But there has been a bill already introduced in Illinois to stop enforcement of anti-sleeping ordinances. It's not perfect by any means, but we're working on getting it amended. That was actually introduced the day of the decision, and we are, it's not on this chart, but there are a number of other jurisdictions, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Minnesota, some others, where we've heard interest from either state level advocates or actual state legislators in passing what we're calling the Gloria Johnson anti-criminalization template bill in some form or another. So yeah, so there's good stuff happening out there as well, but you know, the bad news is that, yeah, this is like what was already bad across the country has been kind of supercharged. The vast majority of jurisdictions that have passed new laws or strengthened old laws are in California, unsurprisingly. But there are a lot in other places across the country. And we're just getting these by doing kind of, we have a legislative tracking service that we use called Fiscal Note that helps to pull local city council. And so we're trying to find them there, and just Google alerts for homeless camping ban or homeless camping ordinance to see if we can pull any news stories about them. So it's a very imperfect method. If there are folks who have additional ones that aren't on this list, definitely feel free to send them over. I can put my information in the chat when we're done. This is just an Excel spreadsheet on our shared drive. There's a way that I can share this. I don't want to share it like in editable format because I don't want people potentially deleting things accidentally. But I think there's a way that we can share it in a non-editable form, but that people will be able to see it updated as it goes along. Eventually, we hope to get this information onto our website, but it isn't there yet. But I will, once we have that like shareable link, I will make sure we get that to Francis to forward on to this group. And yeah, I think the most frustrating thing I've seen so far is that so many of the news stories, the coverage of this, says it's always kind of, there was a 5-hour session, there was lots of debate, lots of people coming out using all the talking points that like we've been trying to share with people, and then the ordinance still passes. And so that's been kind of really disheartening to know that like people are doing kind of everything they can. They're using all the best information, and you know, people's prejudice basically still rules the day. But you know, there are definitely some of these positive stories of cities where the resistance has been effective, and so yeah, it's definitely not a reason not to try. the other kind of crushing thing has been that like a lot of these bans are amendments of old laws, particularly in California and other places in the Ninth Circuit that were under the Martin versus Boise framework. Like, it's cities going through and literally only taking out the part that says that you can't enforce the law if there's no alternative shelter available. So cities are deliberately choosing to be able to enforce the law without even bothering to have to make sure there's anywhere else where people could go. That's, again, just a sad commentary. So that's kind of the quick overview. I see Donald has his hand up.
So thank you for doing that, Eric. Really appreciate it. We've just been tracking through Google mostly whether it's actually sweeps happening, but I'm glad you're doing a legislation as well. We really appreciate that. I didn't know if you'd heard about Wilmington and the protected class resolution that passed. So that hopefully is a model we can use in other places. And in addition to this work, I know that we are, and the Alliance is working with the U.S. Conference of Mayors to get a Dear Colleague letter from places that are actually not criminalizing. The other thing I've seen, Eric, and I don't know if you've seen this, is when there's measures around resources like a shelter. There's a lot of dialogue, and then the or the criminalization forces come out, and it gets, that happened in Kansas and a couple of other places. I was curious to I know you testified today in Pittsburgh, I believe.
No, I testified last week, 2 weeks ago in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, just wondered how that went with a national voice.
Yeah, so in Philadelphia, Councilwoman Kendra Brown introduced a resolution condemning the Grants Pass decision. It passed and calling for non-criminalization approaches. It was just a resolution, no binding impact, but we are hoping to use it to build support for actual legislation. So, you know, that was a very good first step, but just a first step. As I said, I also testified for the Pennsylvania State Democratic Caucus. They are interested in introducing actual legislation, and they're actually working on that right now. So, yeah, lots of good stuff going on in Pennsylvania.
Awesome. And Allentown also has, I think their mayor is signing on to some anti-Grants Pass resolutions as well.
So this is Anthony Prince with the National Union of the Homeless and the California Homeless Union. I wanted to ask Eric or anyone else who can answer the question in terms of these amended ordinances or new ordinances, piggybacking on or trying to use Grants Pass as a justification, whether any legal challenges have been made, and if so, on what basis. You know, we've been using the 14th Amendment and have effectively stopped sweeps and challenged some of these ordinances and policies. And even this morning, we were able to push back in a small town in Northern California where they were hiding behind Grants Pass. And we said, well, that does not impact the increased risk of harm that you're going to put people at by continuing or intensifying these sweeps. And that constitutional avenue remains open. And in our heat case that we had for 2 consecutive summers in Sacramento, we won. The city of Sacramento appealed those injunctions and lost, and now they've determined that their rehearing on that was also denied. So that path exists. So I guess my question, even if we don't have time to answer it here, I would be interested in knowing what, if any, legal challenges have been brought, what the basis of those challenges would be, and learn a little bit more about them. Thanks.
We don't have any, I'm not aware of any cases that have been filed since. There are definitely people working through state level constitutional claims. But yeah, we're kind of still working on the big picture legal strategy. And I know you're coming to our conference in the fall So yeah, that's where we'll be discussing some more strategy. But yeah, we're still working on the broader strategy.
Thank you, Eric. With that, I will go ahead and pass it on to Donald for next steps.
Yeah, so this is just we really want to have an open discussion about this because there have been a lot of attempts, both legal attempts, both organizing, talking points, a lot of approaches to this issue, and there's a lot of frustration out in the community. I got 2 calls last night about communities that are just at throw your hands up in the air point. And we have talked for the last few months about the need for direct action. And so what we wanted to get from today is what people think about that and how do we hold elected officials in communities accountable. And there's been a lot of suggestions. One is that, both California and Florida are tourist generated economies. And if there's a way to impact tourism, then that would certainly make this a more serious issue with those elected officials. But every community, most of the ones we've talked about, don't have touristry as a main engine that drives their economy. So we just wanted to talk about what do people think, what kinds of direct action would be, nonviolent direct action would be, do people think would be useful if we run out of options. I think there's still a chance for legal victories, but I do think that there's, especially in California, well, in Florida as well, the leaders of those 2 states are really, really aggressively pushing it, almost challenging people when they don't do it. Well, they are challenging people in California. So what is our Montgomery bus boycott? How can we impact the community enough where it is non-beneficial to them to do this kind of action? So just want to have an open discussion. And some of you may say, we got to keep doing, letter writing campaigns and talking to our legislators and getting on agendas for state and local meetings. And that's fine as well. We just want to hear from you guys what your thoughts are about next steps. So anybody, please, if you have some thoughts or ideas or hesitancy, please go ahead and share. Anthony, I know you had some ideas last night. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts.
Well, just very briefly, of course, the union has always been about direct action, and we use the litigation, the legal process, not as a standalone approach, but as an integral part of building the union and building the movement. So whether we win, lose, or draw, we're still constantly increasing our membership. In Sacramento, we have 2,900 members, and we've added about 300 more members since the city took down Camp Resolution, where we were able to hold our ground for over 250 days and force the city to sign a lease, which they then breached and carried out a police action to close the camp. But what that did is it resulted in bringing the Disability Rights California, the Environmental Justice Coalition, and the ACE organization much closer to us. And 2 weeks later, a direct action was staged at the state capitol. We had 3 or 4 union members arrested there. So I think that what Donald and I talked a little bit about was that the Montgomery bus boycott took place under certain conditions at a certain time that are very different now. But one thing about it was that they dug in for the long haul. They did not expect or get an immediate result. They made provisions so that they could determine what is the point of vulnerability of the city of Montgomery. We know that this mythology that Rosa Parks just decided not to move, and that's triggered it. She was part of a detailed preparations and planning. So we're looking at things like that in different parts of California, where we could have what is the point of vulnerability? Economic, political, reputational. How can we use our forces to attack their weak point? and then make the commitment for the detailed planning. The bus boycott lasted over a year. I think it was 375 days. And a lot of lessons can be learned for how they conducted that campaign. But I think digging in, broadening, building bridges, and framing it not just as a question of homelessness, but the inaccessibility of housing, linking it to the Bring America Home Now campaign, so that people can't isolate it just to the homeless, but they see the direct action as far as it means to hang on to the houses they have, prevent themselves from being evicted, and get homes that they're right now inaccessible. So we're going to definitely continue these discussions, but I think more forces are going to be thrown our way, and we don't have the option of throwing up our hands. We have to keep fighting, and we are fighting. And so I think that this is exactly the point, the type of discussions we need to undertake. And we'll be keeping everyone posted as these discussions move forward.
Thank you, Anthony, for that wonderful response. And you just made me think about a couple of things that come to my mind when I think about direct action. And one thing that I am really just in fascination with is the Palestinian movement that's happening across the country. And I know it's a very, very controversial thing, and so many different thoughts and feelings go into it. But here in Cincinnati, the group that's been doing the most direct action and the group that's been the most consistent in just mobilizing and organizing for a cause has been the Palestinian group here. And I've been fortunate enough to work with them and to support them and just find them to be a really wonderful group of people who not only see the Palestinian issue in a vacuum, but see it connected to housing, see it connected to so many different issues. So when we're, doing our own things, they're asking us how can they support us? How can they work with us? How can they lend a hand to the work that we're doing? And so I've found that really, really wonderful to see that they're not looking at it in a vacuum, but willing to work with us. And so this is something to think about, because I know their movement is still going on across multiple cities and multiple states. And so how do we connect our issue to their issue and find a way to work together that's effective for both of us? And Anthony's point that I also agreed with is using housing and its inaccessibility as the big picture, as the main point that we want to hammer down, because we all are seeing so many people be evicted and become first-time experiencers of homelessness because of rent being too high, because of landlords being slumlords and not actually protecting their residents. And so there's so much energy here in Cincinnati that we're looking to do a teach-in on the 30th of October about know your rights and how you organize for power with your neighbors in your community or in your neighborhood or your building or whatever. So hoping to build more tenant organizations within the city of Cincinnati that could eventually rise up for whatever we decide to do as a group, building our power, building our base and our people within buildings itself to represent people, not represent, but to support the folks living outdoors. So that's kind of just two thoughts I have is that, you're absolutely right. We need to build on the housing issues that we have and to really nail down that this is not just a homelessness issue. This goes far beyond. This goes into the amount of money going to housing. This goes into the priorities our councils and state legislations, our state legislators are focusing on, and just working with organizers in different areas within our cities and states.
Okay, I'm so excited about this question right now about how we're all coming together. So the whole thing with the whole city and everything, there's so many of our colleagues or constituents that are been invested in stocks that have to do a lot with the crisis that a lot of these neighborhoods are going on. They're getting funded for keeping our communities in this derelict phase we see them in, you know, and it's all, everybody's getting a piece of this pie. So here in where I'm at in Sun Valley, I'd try to go and approach and be communicative and try to like work with the city and whatnot. But you know, I think everybody that's on board right now should just in a lot of cities, districts probably resign, take a pension, go down. If you've been there already for more than 5 years, but like Gavin Newsom, with all respects, Karen Bass, you know, they've been trying to do this thing for so many years, and it's just kind of like it's beneficial to people to have dysfunctionalities, you know what I mean? To have dysfunction, to how else will the enforcer enforce on the delinquent if there's no delinquent, you know? And it's kind of messed up to be like that. I have to see it like that. But ever since I joined this coalition has given me so much hope now, because I see that you guys are taking a lot of initiatives to a lot of things that I've said in the past. And I thank you guys so much and appreciate the opportunity of being part of this coalition. And thank you, Donald, Sue, that I know, and Tyler, you know, all of you wouldn't be happening without, you know, and I feel a lot more hopeful about us coming together and being able to be collectively, individually, and authentically ourselves. Now, maybe we should focus on it locally a little bit, like maybe try to do horticulture therapy, because at the end of the day, we need to do some kind of mental health things. And I've been working a lot with the veterans, with all types of Americans, and I call Americans anybody that lives here and that's from America, right? So that doesn't have a color or any kind of bias thing. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you guys for doing your work, and I'm so glad that to be able to expand it here to where I'm at is what my goal is, you know, because what you guys represent is so cool and just what's right, you know. And
yeah, thank you, and thank you for raising this topic. You know, like someone else said, it's a balance. You have to have the advocacy and the legislation, and you have to have the voice. The voices out there. So I have a question. One is, are there of what you've been thinking about? Are there things that are definitely like off the list, just for our thinking about it, and things that you're thinking about, so that we can because I'm sure there's some certain no-go zones. And like, this isn't appropriate, this isn't what we want to do. And then there are others that are like, yeah, this is sort of the kind of thing we're thinking of. That at least would be helpful for me. I'm here in Venice Beach, and, you know, thinking about tourism and Los Angeles and the Olympics, the World Cup, and the Super Bowl coming, which has put it in, you know, an urgency to things, even though those are not tomorrow. You know, I think about the vulnerability, thinking about the Montgomery, you know, the bus, you know, halt movement. So the roads, you know, movement is the vulnerability here, from a not just tourism, but from a standpoint of everything. So I don't know. I mean, so I'm just throwing out ideas, but maybe the bridge is something that, you know, if there were people at key entrances onto the freeways, then I think about the what happened in front of the Supreme Court, the sleep-in that the National Coalition hosted, the rally, and maybe there are key places in Los Angeles, Pershing Square downtown, the Venice Strand here, you know, West Side Mall, but, you know, where there is a concerted, you know, people on the ground. And again, I don't know if that now with Grants Pass, how that is, what happens. But then you had the, you know, the what did they call them? The Fire Fridays that Jane Fonda and others were doing in DC, being in a certain place, showing up on a regular basis every week. And actually what Jane Fonda said about that is the important thing is the other prongs, the organization around that. It can't just be a drop in the bucket kind of thing. So I throw out those. But again, I think it would be helpful to know sort of the kind of direction you're thinking about, obviously not for this call, but just in general, so that creative, thinking, outside of the box thinking can really happen.
Christine, that's a really, really important question, really thoughtful question. So a couple of things. The main thing, I think the we won't go to zone is anything that would involve violence, of course. So whatever we do, it's from a nonviolent approach. And there's been a lot of ideas. You mentioned some of them. You know, let's hold up traffic in all those cities that Eric mentioned for a day. The collective impact of that would really make a statement. Or the other idea is bringing people to California and, you know, doing an event like we did at the Supreme Court at the State House in Sacramento. And so that is something that we've thought about. The challenge is to do it, and the one reason why touristry and affecting the touristry, it has an immediate impact. If you talk about we're going to do these boycotts around the Olympics, that starts to scare people a little bit. But there is something that we have to keep in mind. Now, I've had some disagreements with this. So we also don't want to alienate more people, right? So, you know, when it comes to the business community, and I know some people are going to say, well, they're the enemy. You know, we don't want to further separate us versus them when it comes to the business community. Often it's the business community that says, hey, get these people out of here. But if we overly alienate that community, then it actually puts more pressure on us versus less pressure. So that's one thought.
That's exactly why I'm asking the question. Right. Yeah.
So you know, another thing is this is a simple one. There's two other ones. One is the Take Off the Boards campaign. So we've talked a lot about that, and that would be, and this is something that you know may require some further thought. So there are a few around the country rent strikes going on in order to kind of protest the increase in rent. So a shelter strike, which would require an alternative for people to be at, might be something to think about. People have talked about taking over municipal parking lots. So that isn't like as heavy a lift. It would really make some people mad, but you could shut down a parking lot that a city uses for revenue a lot simpler than you could do some of the other things. But whatever we do, it has to be consistent. The Take Off the Boards would be going to abandoned buildings that are owned by the city or by HUD and taking those buildings over. So there is a Kansas City rent strike going on right now. So those are some things that have been out there, but beyond violence and you know, doing our best to, I don't think they should be off the hook, the business community, but I do think we have to make sure that we're not alienating those businesses that may be our allies, because there are businesses that have supported the work, that are our allies. Not everybody, you can't, there's not a monolith when it comes to that. So yeah, but
I have
they
a
would
thought
all
on
need
that.
to be individual though.
Based on what you're saying, I always look to history and tree hugging. You know, there's a huge, beautiful tree in Atlanta that's right at the equivalent of what Lincoln Center, at the Woodruff Arts Center. And there was a woman who chained herself to the tree, and the tree still stands. What about, and we talked about sweeps, which is, I think, is a horrific situation. What if there was people holding hands around an encampment or around a shelter that might be at risk or around affordable housing that might be about to be converted or something like that? The idea of joining the communities together. So I'll just throw that out based on what you were talking about. And I do think Venice, I mean, they say that Venice Beach here is like the most, it's the number one tourist destination in Los Angeles. Maybe that's wrong, but someone told me that. But I do think that there, you know, it's a place that is very media appealing. So anyway, but the idea of that tree hugging and the idea of people joining hands for people whose voices are diminished could be something that would be along the lines of peaceful and compassion at the same time.
Thank you. Sue has her hand up. Thank you very much for your comments, Christine. And please, I know we have some radical organizers out there. Lend your voice. We really want to think this through. And this isn't just for conversation's sake. We really want to do something. And we think we're getting close to exhaustion when it comes to kind of doing it the peaceful way. Not that we're talking non-peaceful. It's just that, there's a level of frustration in a lot of communities because every day something worse happens. Like Miami or Florida just instituted a sleeping ban statewide. So go ahead, Sue.
So to follow up on what Christine was just saying, I mean, we did Hands Across America in the 1986, 87. And that may be something that we might want to just think about doing again, is doing Hands Across America, is that we are all our neighbors and that we need to be sharing our resources and that we should be having homes and not criminalizing people. So it's just a thought that came to my mind when Christine was talking. And I think it was a great model. We raised a lot of dollars to help a lot of programs across the country. So something to look at.
Thank you, Sue. Great idea. Linda.
Hi, Donald. Thank you. I'm just wondering, with all the rehab and the renovations and the Army Corps of Engineers that are going to be showing up in Western North Carolina, is there some way to combine? I mean, they can really dig and do and fix and rehabilitate railroad beds and creeks that have rerouted themselves and bridges. Right quick here. We're about to see it all be built right back up.
Yeah, they rebuilt the bridge in Pennsylvania in like a month. So we know, there's some great minds out there doing stuff.
Is there a way to do some kind of journalism that explains, like, hey, we could be solving for homelessness equally as readily if we chose to?
I say that often when I speak that, there's no issue in America that if we really are committed to solving it, that we can't solve. I mean, if you just think about, maybe there's some medical situations that we haven't been able to solve yet, but anything that's just practical, that is something that people focus on, we get rid of it in a few days. Think of the Baltimore Harbor crisis as just an example of like how quickly, when people put resources and desire to stuff, how quickly things change. Marianne?
Hi, everybody. I put some of this in the chat already. I just want to reiterate that I think boycotts I don't think they are hostile. I mean, it's just sort of, we vote every day when you shop, where you eat, what you do. I think it's not hard to identify the people who are actively asking for people to be swept or raided from the buildings, or doing hostile architecture, who are against tenants' rights. They're kind of asking for people not to go. I mean, it's just like any company or organization. And also, they're not doing the math, because if you were for tenants' rights, the tenants would have money to go to their businesses. These places are closing. So it's kind of like a wake up to, we all are in this together, and none of this we're all going to drown if this continues. And I just think there's something that, if we can't appeal to their sense of decency, we could actually help with the math and point out the fact that that's what's really making a damage in our societies all around. And I do not think it's too early in Los Angeles to start with the Olympics, because it's happening already. It's clearly happening. And I'm seeing service providers are working triple time, trying to service and help this community. So I think we can do it it's just pointing out where we want our money to go and where we don't. And I think we owe it to the community to point out the bad actors, and we can do it respectfully. We don't have to, terrorize them, just point it out, you know, and maybe, or to point out the good people, and then the bad people, will fade away, hopefully. But that's just my thought.
Yeah, it brings up something that I think makes sense. First of all, we've had successful boycotts around bum fights. I don't know if you remember that, but we took on Walmart and Target, and I don't know who else was the national organization, and we got them to remove that harmful stuff from the shelves by threatening a boycott of their organizations nationally. But I think you do know really clearly who the hostile businesses are. So you are onto something there, because when you're at a city council meeting, there are businesses that get up and testify that, I've been so harmed and please help me and that kind of thing. So those are targets, but I wonder if we could locate, Eric, this is a job for your team, a Cicero. Like, what is it? Is there a business attached to Cicero that we could actually use as like a poster child for boycotting? Because, they have a oversized role in this. So I know that they're tied to hedge funds, but you can't really boycott a hedge fund. Is there a company that's part of their portfolio that we could really use and do this really nationally? So I don't know what that is, but if anybody else has any ideas about that. But I love the idea of boycotts based on your community, who's doing it in your community. But I would love to see in California something more statewide too. And that's what I was thinking about, municipal businesses that we could attack. But I'm sorry, Jim.
Hey folks, I'm joining now, trying to be the state rep for Maine and possibly all New England if you need it. I had a question in the chat. Are we doing anything for World Homeless Day on October 10th? And second idea was, can we do some research as to diversion funds and how they're spent and how inexpensive it is to prevent homelessness, trying to keep people in their housing. That's a success story that people need to know about on a national level. And that's something that we could advocate for more funds for, to slow down the inflow so we can take care of the ones that are homeless. Thank you.
What they keep making new homeless people is because now they're messing around with the motorhomes. The motorhomes now, the parking enforcement isn't on it. The city gets a slice on it, and the motorhomes, they're considered homes in California, right? And so they go after them, tow their motorhomes, make them homeless. So they're contributing to homelessness here in LA a lot, and so as they're contributing to the homelessness, then they go and try to give them outreach and tell them, now you're on a waiting list for a bed because now you're homeless. It's kind of ridiculous how that process goes. But I just want to know, is it necessary to make more people homeless? Because a lot of these shelters or all these housing places, they're also kicking people out because they end up selling the property. These are new apartments, you know what I mean? Are constituents willing to not really give us the housing for the moment and then just allow us to, feed it enough to where okay, they're going to mess it up anyways, or somehow like that to where, they end up, because the organization still has that property because it was donated to them, right? To do the interim sheltering. Well, because I put the address, one of the shelters as my address, and I keep getting emails from a real estate agent saying that he wants to make an offer in my property, and I don't have property. I just know, and it gives out that address of the shelter, So it's just something to look at in a different view. What is it that how they're really using this, or how they're still being able to portray $24 billion gone to supposedly homelessness.
Yes, thanks, Adaora. Great work facilitating the meeting. Thanks everybody for joining us. We are very appreciative of your time and your partnership. As I hear everybody's passion and ideas flowing, it's fantastic to see. But we want to move beyond ideas, right? So our next steps, actually, Adaora and I will be sending out an email, follow-up email. We're actually asking that all ideas you have about direct actions, I would send an email so I can actually follow up with you And please provide us ideas that you think we can do that is more impactful for our movement. So if you see our email from us, it's really asking for your ideas that we can do together. But this movement is not just NCH's movement, it's not BAHN's movement, it's for all of us. This is the people's campaign. We encourage you to actually sign on as an official partner. We encourage you to actually bring your network, get people sign on, your neighbors, even those who are not involved in this work, because this goes beyond those people working in this specific field. This is America's campaign, so we want to make sure that happens. And we believe that housing is solvable, homelessness is preventable. We can only do it that like if we unite as one. One organization cannot do it alone, but united we can move mountains. And we hope that you continue to join us, invite more people, and let's work together and actually end this homelessness. You know, enough is enough. We have been asking for too long. It's time to start demanding. And by demanding, we have to be united as one organization. So we're looking forward to the next steps. You'll be hearing from us soon. Please, once we send that email out, provide your ideas. We can put those ideas together. And then for our next meetings, we discuss those ideas. We can solidify what we are moving forward with. And that's how we hope to continue, because it's about actions and policy. We're looking forward to the next partnership. Thank you, everybody.